All hell is breaking loose right now, and this time it is not political theater. It is not campaign talk. It is not another social media stunt. This is real-world escalation, missiles, retaliation, and an entire region sliding toward open war. And at the center of it all is one man, Donald Trump. Over the last 48 hours, the United States, alongside Benjamin Netanyahu, launched direct strikes inside Iran, targeting military sites, command hubs, and senior leadership. Not proxies, not warnings, direct hits. And now the blowback has started. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is openly threatening what it calls the largest offensive operation in its history. Missiles are being readied. Drones are in the air. U.S. bases across the Middle East are on high alert. State media in Tehran has confirmed the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, a move that instantly transformed this from a limited strike into something far more dangerous, a power vacuum, a revenge campaign, a nation mobilizing around martyrdom. And while all of this unfolds, while crowds fill the streets chanting for retaliation, while American troops brace for impact, Trump is posting threats online, daring Iran to respond. This is not de-escalation. This is gasoline on a fire. And tonight, that fire is spreading fast. Here's where this stops being speculation and starts becoming official. Because these aren't anonymous leaks or internet rumors. These are direct statements, on the record, from Iran's most powerful military institution, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. In a televised message, the Guard didn't mince words. They said a massive and powerful offensive operation is coming, one that will target Israel and American forces across the region. Not symbolic retaliation, not limited strikes. Their words, the largest operation in the history of the Islamic Republic. That's not propaganda talk. That's a declaration. Then senior Iranian lawmakers stepped forward and called the leaders of the United States and Israel criminals who would face devastating consequences. They accused Washington of crossing a red line and promised blows so severe that America would regret ever starting this. And while Tehran is mobilizing, what is Donald Trump doing? He's not addressing the nation from the Oval Office. He's not calming markets. He's not preparing families with loved ones stationed overseas. He's posting late-night social media threats, all-caps warnings. They better not do that, or we will hit them harder than ever before. That's the strategy. Not diplomacy, not coalition building, not de-escalation, just threats. Even as intelligence officials reportedly warned that killing Ali Khamenei could trigger exactly this kind of regional explosion, Trump pushed forward anyway, betting that Iran would back down. But instead of fear, the strikes have unified hardliners. Instead of collapse, we're seeing mobilization. And now, American troops across the Middle East are the ones waiting to see what comes next. And if you really want to understand how badly this is escalating, don't just look at the missiles. Look at the streets. Because while Donald Trump talks tough online, something far more dangerous is happening on the ground inside Iran. The country isn't fracturing, it's consolidating. All day long, massive crowds have been pouring into city centers. Not dozens, not hundreds. We're talking tens of thousands, in some places what look like hundreds of thousands. Entire squares completely packed, shoulder to shoulder, flags in the air, loudspeakers blasting chants. And these aren't anti-government protests. These are mourning rallies. State-organized gatherings tied to the death of Ali Khamenei, treated not just as a leader, but as a martyr. In places like Isfahan and Mashhad, especially around the Imam Reza shrine, the images are overwhelming. Black banners, funeral processions, huge crowds chanting, "Death to America," demanding revenge, demanding retaliation. You can feel the anger through the screen. This is exactly the opposite of what Trump and his allies promised would happen. They said strikes would weaken the regime. They said leadership decapitation would cause chaos. They said the government would crumble. But instead of collapse, the attack appears to have given hardliners the one thing they didn't have before: unity. And when a country of nearly 90 million people starts rallying around vengeance, when nationalism mixes with religion and martyrdom, that's when conflicts stop being surgical. That's when they become generational. And every single American base in the region now knows it. Then came the part nobody in Washington wanted to admit was possible. The retaliation didn't stay inside Iran. It spread. Fast. Within hours of the threats from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, alarms started going off across the Middle East. U.S. installations went into lockdown. Air defenses activated. Personnel rushed into bunkers. Because Iran didn't just talk, they started firing. Reports began surfacing of drones and missiles aimed at American and Allied positions, not in one place, but across multiple countries at the same time. Bases in Iraq on high alert. Intercepts over the Gulf. Explosions reported near strategic facilities. This is exactly what military planners fear most: a distributed response, dozens of small strikes designed to stretch defenses thin, not one battlefield, an entire map lighting up. And every single one of those locations has American troops, which means every single one of those targets carries the risk of American casualties. While this is unfolding, Donald Trump keeps framing it like a game of chicken. Hit them harder, threaten louder, escalate faster. But wars don't work like social media posts. You don't scare a country into submission after you just killed its top leader. You trigger revenge. Now, from Iraq to the Gulf, from embassy compounds to air bases, U.S. forces are bracing for follow-up attacks, knowing that one drone getting through, one missile slipping past defenses, could change everything overnight. This isn't contained anymore. This isn't theoretical. This is a region-wide powder keg, and Trump just lit the match. But here's the part most people in Washington either ignored or completely misunderstood. They thought removing one man would end the problem. They thought killing Ali Khamenei would somehow cause the system to collapse, like the entire Islamic Republic would just fold overnight. That's not how this works. In Iran, the supreme leader isn't just a politician. It's an institution. It's a network of clerics, generals, intelligence chiefs, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, all wired together for decades. So when the strike happened, it didn't create surrender. It created succession. Within hours, discussions began about who steps in next. And the name surfacing again and again is Mojtaba Khamenei, his son, a figure widely seen as even closer to the hardliners, even more aligned with security forces, even less interested in compromise with the West. Think about that for a second. If Donald Trump believed this operation would weaken the regime, the opposite may be happening. Because now you don't just have retaliation, you have martyrdom politics. You have a new leader rising under the banner of revenge. You have a population told their supreme leader was killed by America and Israel. That doesn't produce moderates. It produces hawks. It produces crackdowns. It produces long memories. So instead of shortening the conflict, this strike may have locked the region into something far more dangerous, a generational standoff fueled by grief, anger, and nationalism. Which means what Trump sold as a quick, decisive move could end up creating a much bigger, much longer war. And while the streets of Tehran and Mashhad burn with chants of death to America back here in the United States, the reaction is far from unified. According to the latest polls, only about 35% of Americans approve of how Donald Trump is handling the crisis in Iran. 50% disapprove. That's right, a majority of Americans are already questioning the wisdom of this preemptive strike and the chaos that followed. You see, this isn't just a foreign policy problem, it's a domestic credibility problem. For a president who ran on no more regime change wars and ending endless military entanglements, this rapid escalation is exactly the opposite. A White House that promised restraint is now seen as reckless, impulsive, and dangerously aggressive. And yet, in true Trump fashion, the messaging is the same. Threats, tough talk, and rallies instead of calm communication. MAGA loyalists, politicians, and influencers are scrambling to spin this as noble, as patriotic, even as troops are at risk of dying in a conflict that few Americans actually wanted. Senator Lindsey Graham called it a noble death for any American soldiers who might die. MAGA commentators argue that this is America first, even though the majority of the country disagrees. Meanwhile, critics from within Trump's own coalition, like Congressman Thomas Massie and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, are openly challenging this direction, saying this isn't what they voted for. But the administration dismisses dissenters as not truly MAGA, not part of the loyal base, while the country watches a widening war unfold, wondering why the president chose aggression over strategy, threats over diplomacy, and spectacle over explanation. The question now is simple. How far will Americans tolerate this reckless gamble as Iranian missiles streak across the Middle East and the death toll rises, both abroad and potentially at home? This is no longer a theory. This is reality knocking on the Oval Office door. And now we get to the part where the domestic spin machine kicks into overdrive. Because while Donald Trump has ignited the region, MAGA Republicans are scrambling to justify it, no matter how extreme the fallout. Senator Lindsey Graham, the self-styled war hawk, went on air and told Americans that if soldiers die in Iran, it will be a noble death. Noble. He literally framed the deaths of American troops as a patriotic necessity, something to be celebrated. MAGA commentators echoed this talking point, suggesting that any pain, any loss, is worth it because Trump's regime is supposedly making the world safer. Meanwhile, other MAGA stalwarts, people like Rick Scott and Scott Jennings, are working overtime to explain away dissent. Any criticism, they claim, isn't real MAGA, not America first, not loyal. Even when members of the movement like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie openly call out the hypocrisy, the response is the same. You're not part of the movement. Think about that. The president pushes the U.S. into a region-wide conflict, threatens nuclear escalation, kills Iran's supreme leader, and the spin team reduces opposition to an identity test. Are you MAGA enough to excuse this? It's astonishing. Families back home worried about deployments, service members staring at smoke on foreign soil, Americans paying the bill for a war they didn't vote for, all dismissed as irrelevant because the narrative must be preserved. And here's the kicker. The argument isn't policy, it's loyalty. It's devotion to a brand, to a personality, over facts, over consequences, over human life. This is exactly the kind of environment that allows a preemptive strike to spiral into retaliation, escalation, and potentially years of conflict, while the domestic rhetoric sanitizes death and destruction as noble and necessary. Every missile fired in Baghdad, every strike on a Gulf airbase, every chant of revenge in Tehran becomes a backdrop to a domestic conversation framed entirely around personal allegiance to Donald Trump, rather than strategy or restraint. And that is why, no matter how loud MAGA spins it, the consequences are real. The anger abroad is real. The potential for American casualties is real. And the American people watching from home? They are left to wonder who, if anyone, is actually in charge. And now we hit the part that most networks won't touch. The deeper angle behind this entire operation. Because while Donald Trump and his team claim this is about Iran's nuclear threat, the timeline, the secrecy, and the messaging paint a very different picture. There's a pattern here. A regime change agenda wrapped in national security rhetoric, combined with an administration desperate to distract from scandal. We now know from investigative reporting that Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein and the tangled web surrounding 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue are part of what this administration has been trying to cover up. Operation Preemptive Strike, or Operation Epic Fury, isn't just about uranium. It's about controlling the narrative, silencing questions, and shifting attention from internal crises to foreign adventure. The timing is striking. Epstein files, revelations, and legal scrutiny are all bubbling up. And suddenly the White House directs missiles, orders strikes, and issues social media threats. In Washington, insiders reportedly call this a wag the dog moment, a classic diversion. And when you consider the political rhetoric, the MAGA loyalists defending it as necessary or noble, it becomes clear. Facts, human lives, and even strategy take a backseat to optics, fundraising, and distraction. Meanwhile, back in Tehran, Baghdad, Dubai, and Doha, the consequences are very real. Iranian missiles strike, crowds chant for vengeance, American troops brace for impact. But in Trump's narrative, it's all about strength, all about showing dominance, all about reinforcing loyalty at home while the world burns abroad. This isn't hypothetical. This is the administration's pattern. Scandal coverage, regime change as a backdrop, and a domestic audience being told, trust the plan. And if you peel back the layers, you start to see that the war isn't just a foreign policy crisis. It's also a domestic political maneuver with stakes far higher than most Americans realize. And finally, here's the reality that no amount of MAGA talking points or official statements can spin away. Donald Trump promised no endless wars. He promised to put America first. He promised restraint. And yet, American money, American soldiers, and American credibility are all on the line in a conflict that escalated faster than anyone predicted. Families are anxious, soldiers are bracing, markets are reacting. And the president? He's still posting online, threatening retaliation, and treating global conflict like a reality TV show. Look at the suffering at home. People living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to pay for healthcare, rent, or food. And now, taxes and resources are being funneled into a foreign adventure with deadly consequences, all under the guise of defending America. This isn't leadership. It's a spectacle. It's ego. And it's dangerous. And that's why, if you've been following this with us here at the Midas Touch Network, the message is clear. We must demand accountability, not applause. We must separate propaganda from reality. And we must remember that real lives, American and foreign, are on the line every single hour this escalates. So hit subscribe, follow the updates, and stay informed. This is far from over. The consequences of these decisions are unfolding right now, in real time, across the Middle East and here at home. Because while the world watches Iran, the Gulf, and US bases brace, the real story is about who is truly controlling the narrative and whether Americans will continue to pay the price for it. Stay tuned, stay alert, and stay ready. This is the crisis that Donald Trump ignited, and it's only getting worse.